would hit it with a shoe and it kept not dying. It would just be like skittering around,
It was
skittering
like
around.
in the baffles of Carrie's her sleeping pad. So I feel like every time I tried to kill it was in the baffle, and so we weren't making contact.
And there's like a little bit of screaming and
a lot of screaming.
Molly finally goes, "Oh, Hi, I'm Carrie.
And I'm Molly.
And you're listening to the Two Sisters on Adventures podcast, Tahoe Rim Trail edition. So today,
Day 3. I now interrupt you to say Day 3.
This will be Day 3. So today we're going to talk about our third day, if you can't believe it, on the Tahoe Rim Trail. It's funny because looking back, I would have thought that this day wasn't that eventful. But then when I look at my journal and my pictures, it's one of those things where I go, oh, actually, a lot happened that day.
And I'd start off by saying that apparently we were a little bit tired because the first sentence I wrote in my journal at the end of this day was, we woke up to a chilly morning and a nice sunset. So apparently there was some confusion going on.
A beautiful morning sunset.
But it's funny because Carrie got up and then needed to dig a cat hole and get that.
No, that was already dug. We pre-dug. We're not animals.
That's right. We pre-dug our cat holes like civilized girls.
Actually, we pre-dug 3 cat holes, just in case.
Yeah, just in case a visitor would come and want to use one of them.
Exactly.
But anyways, it's funny because Carrie like unzipped the tent and the sky was, just starting to light up with the sunrise, and it was pretty. And I like stuck my phone outside of the tent to try to take a picture, and it was like this, like most of it was this rock that was by our tent, and then it was just this like blurry like Carrie and a blurry sunrise and a rock. And
that sounds beautiful.
I saw the picture later, and it was just really funny, but it was just like blindly snapping
artistic.
a pic. Not even, but
yeah, some photographers can blindly snap a pic, and it's beautiful.
Exactly.
So anyway, yeah, it was so beautiful that morning. I think I wrote all about the beautiful sunrise and how cold and windy it was that morning. But it's funny because the night before, I feel like we had pitched our tent fairly high on the hillside, but for whatever reason, the wind would just rush through the trees but stop before it hit our camp, which was so nice. I was so thankful because it's a little bit hard to sleep in a tent when it's just like, and it's just flapping against everything. So I was pretty pleased with that, and it felt like we were really just winners in terms of our campsite.
Honestly.
So we kind of discussed that morning if we wanted to there's an alternate route you can take, and it's like the old Fire Road trail, which used to be the Tahoe Rim Trail, but now they put it on the bike trail. So we were interested in taking that because the only good campsite that we could find was about 18.5 miles away, and if we took the old Tahoe Rim Trail route, then we would cut off about 0.7 miles. And somehow 18.5 or 18.7 miles sounded better than 19.4.
Yeah.
So we just kind of decided, okay, I think we're going to, once we pack all our stuff up, we're going to go ahead and go on the old Fire Road. And honestly, I feel so good about that decision. I read some comments on Far Out First because they said things like, you really aren't missing very much if you take the old Fire Trail. And so we decided that we would just go ahead and do that. And honestly, I loved that road. Like, it's funny how when you hike on a bike trail and then you just get really sore all of a sudden, walking on a gravel fire road just actually felt really good. And I don't know, the grade was awesome. I felt really strong that morning. It was sunny out. It was a little bit cold and windy. We'd had a Pop-Tart for breakfast as part of our breakfast, which, by the way, I don't know, have we discussed Pop-Tarts yet?
No, we haven't.
So on one of our trips this summer, one of our friends brought Pop-Tarts, and of course we did not bring Pop-Tarts, so we were looking at her with so much jealousy.
And she did share.
She was super kind to share with us. So we started bringing Pop-Tarts with us, and I find that a lot of the time I eat my oatmeal in the morning, and then right as we're about to leave, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
But it turns out when I eat a Pop-Tart with my breakfast, I'm not hungry when it's time to leave. And they're so good because they're very cold, so they're kind of firm, but they're not frozen. Definitely recommend.
Yeah, super tasty. And because we were going to resupply in Tahoe City, we knew we could bring like a couple luxury food items because we weren't going to be like just like, like the most basic like food pack. We could add in some fun things. Yeah. So I think we got to have a Pop-Tart almost every morning we were on the Tahoe Rim Trail, which was certainly a delight. Yeah, no, Pop-Tarts are good and they keep you full. So what was cool is we made it to Relay Peak, which is over 10,000 feet in elevation, in about an hour from our camp. So we just had a nice kind of constant grade on the road, and then made it up to the ridge and then up to Relay Peak from there. And I remember Carrie at the final, as we were finally gaining the peak, Carrie kind of took off and put on the jets, and
I felt strong.
Yeah, and I don't think that they even sign the peak, so you just have to either look at a map or kind of know like, oh, I'm about to go downhill, so I think I'm on the peak. But it was cool because the north section of the TRT, there were a lot of cool views of Lake Tahoe, so that was kind of the start of those views, Relay Peak and on.
Yeah, that was actually a really good day for views. And honestly, it just felt so good to go downhill and be on a trail. There's no bikes allowed in the Mount Rose Wilderness. So all of a sudden, we were walking on trails that had super nice switchbacks. They were graded nicely. I could eat while I was walking on it. And there was a lot of views to look at. So that was kind of a fun day.
I agree.
One of the things that was also kind of interesting about this day, so part of the reason we were going 18.7 miles was we were trying to figure out if we either wanted to carry enough water for that day and then also for dinner and breakfast, or if we wanted to make it to a water cache that was, I think, 17 miles away and then go a little farther for camp. And that was why we had decided to do that. But the only water source that day other than the water cache was this little spring. And it was funny because there were people who said that they had missed seeing it. So I was a little nervous about that.
Honestly.
But we were walking on the ridge and it's kind of like dry and barren and there's not a lot out there. And suddenly we were in this, well, it was no longer a meadow. It was definitely a crisped up, burned looking leaves meadow area.
Like they had met the end of their time.
Yeah. But I thought, okay, we're definitely close to the spring because one thing is where there's a ton of plants, you know, that there had to be water at some point.
Yeah.
And so we got to the spot and
honestly, there was even a user-made trail that was very easy to see. And so if you were doing this trail, I believe the spring is quite reliable.
Yeah.
And when we were doing our research, like, I think that the TRT organization was saying that sometimes you might have to go several hundred feet down the hill to actually find flowing water. And I think it still had to do with the high snow year. We had to go maybe 70 feet down the hill. It wasn't
very difficult.
Yeah, not very much.
I guess actually the trail was kind of, Molly did like slide, but also it was fine. She could have
So the point there is just, you're just watching on the switchbacks. At one point, you'll just suddenly see an explosion of leafy plants, and then a user-made trail, and then you start to descend it. And at first, Carrie saw like one little trickle of water and a little bit of mud, and then we were trying to problem solve if we could filter from that. And then we ended up going maybe another 20 feet downhill, and we found what we had been reading on Far Out about, which was a leaf contraption. And so the spring wasn't flowing super fast, but someone had placed a leaf that was able to collect water from a fairly wide swath and then filter it down into the point of the leaf. And so we filtered about 8 liters, and we must have been there for 30 minutes or so. But honestly, we were filtering and we were resting. It was kind of like
we had our electrolytes
break
there so that we wouldn't have to carry extra water for electrolytes.
Ate some
we had some goldfish.
Crackers. That was tasty.
It was a very fun spot to stop to because
nice
it had
view.
great views.
Honestly.
And I don't know, you just kind of felt like you were cheating the system because here you were getting all this water from the tiny trickly leaf thing.
Right? Oh, man.
And it was cold too, I think, right?
Oh, yeah. It was amazing.
It was great water.
And we talked to someone. What is the lake over there that you can filter by? I'll look it up real quick.
What lake where?
Oh, that you can go off trail to filter.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's not Lake Tahoe because that'd be way too far off trail.
That's funny. Gray Lake. I think that adds a mile or so onto the journey. And we talked to one fellow who went to Gray Lake to filter and found a spring over on that side that was delicious and said it was pretty scenic. But once again, we were pretty committed to the whole, we don't get off the trail this time.
Yeah, plus I didn't really want to go an extra 2 miles and then all of a sudden you go 22 miles that day, you know? So anyway, we were really glad that we saw the spring and we didn't have to add on any extra miles. So, of course, after we'd enjoyed our time at the spring, I we both like, we're going to pee before we put our packs on. And so, you know, you walk away from the spring, whatever, you do your business. And it was just so funny to me because, of course, we haven't seen a soul all day. And it's like the second you get done peeing, there's 2 people on the trail. So we put our packs back on and we started going. And all of a sudden we started to see a lot more people.
But what was really cool about this section is there's a lot of like volcanic rocks, and I mean, we didn't know very much about the geological history of this area, but what we learned later when we read one of the signs at the trailheads is that that section of the trail has volcanic origin. So it was cool to just see various scenery and then a little bit more of the volcanic type of geology as well.
Mm-hmm. And it was honestly really fun too, because it was just a ton of great ridge walking. You had awesome views. Of course, maybe the terrain underfoot was a little bit something that you had to pay attention to as well, but it was just nice to be able to see even where we'd camped the last couple of days. That's always a fun feeling when we could always tell where our first day was because it was such a grassy area and there was no trees there. So we could always kind of just look back and be like, oh, there's Spooner Summit. There's this other area. And that's one thing that's very fun about doing a circumnavigation of something, especially something where there's not a volcano in the middle, is you can actually look and see where you've come from.
I don't know how many trails are actually in existence where you can see where all the parts of the trail are.
I know. I started saying that and then I thought maybe that actually doesn't make sense for almost any other
Usually it's
one.
just on the map you could see, oh, we're right across from where we were. But on this trail, a lot of the time you can see where you were camping because it is a rim.
So this was actually also the day that we first saw some other people who were hiking the Tahoe Rim Trail. There was like a man and a woman who were really going fast uphill, and we kind of pulled to the side to let them go by. And they said that it was funny. I guess we couldn't ever tell if they were doing the whole trail or not because we said, where are you backpacking? And they said, oh, we're doing the Tahoe Rim Trail. And we said, oh, all of it. And the guy was like, maybe. And the girl was like, yes. So I don't know if they made it all or not, but it was nice to see some other people backpacking out there.
And I don't remember the name of the place they started, but they must have been around like 60 miles in or so at that point, I would think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then we also got to an exciting milestone in our journey, the California-Nevada border.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That was the spot where we finally decided to have our lunch, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it were just over the halfway point. And that's something where when you're doing longer days, it's like, it's hard because you want to get to the halfway point or past it before you really take a longer rest break because mentally you just know you don't have quite as much trail to conquer after the fact. But yeah, it was cool. There's a sign that kind of shows where the state line is, and then we saw some people stop and take pictures standing on, 1 foot on either side of it. Mm-hmm. And then there was a really nice spot to just sit and get a view of the lake below. So we pulled out our trail pizzas, and Carrie decided that she should elevate her foot for a while. So we laid inverted on the rock slabs, and I was sure that I was gonna like slide into a very awkward position.
Also, it was kind of like a painful rock slab.
It was a painful inversion for about 3 minutes, and then
it felt
we
good on
decided
the feet, though.
We should just right ourselves. But it was just a nice spot for a rest break.
Yeah. And you could watch all the birds fly down below you. And remember, there was a helicopter that was doing, I don't know
they
what.
Must have doing like a construction project or something because there was a helicopter below us. And so it was just kind of interesting to watch like something like a helicopter below you because generally they're above you. So a little bit of perspective there.
There we go. We were really, really high. After that, I felt like the trail wasn't anything too remarkable. There was a lot of little, walking across forest roads, bike sections.
Back up with, more of the mountain biking trail.
Yeah.
So we would cross like more of a multi-use forest road and like link up with that for a while and then go back to the mountain bike trail. And I think at that point we just were invested in speed hiking.
Yeah.
Which was nice though because we were going downhill. So I feel like we could make some good time. And
we walked across a ton of meadows too. I guess there's spots where the water must sit when it melts, and then there's all these leafy plants that then it's just funny when they're all completely shriveled and dried up, just like because they're all just kind of waving in the wind, and it sounds a little creepy.
And I think when we got past the Desolation Wilderness, we saw maybe something that looked like that flower, but it was alive.
Yeah.
And it was maybe some type of a yellow flower. But the point when we got to the meadows, that's just all like dried, dead.
But the
plants.
interesting thing was this is actually the same day that we also met a cyclist who was from the area, and he talked to us about how it had been just such an amazing super bloom of flowers there that year. I guess on Spooner Summit there had been a huge lupin bloom and all kinds of stuff like that. So I'm sure that those meadows were just unbelievably beautiful and probably more beautiful than they typically are in a lower snow year.
And honestly, it was pretty fascinating because even some of the areas that we walked through, we still were seeing flowers. And that was more towards the Desolation Wilderness. But I think our first day, Spooner Summit, we saw lupin and some other flowers still hanging on.
Yeah,
and it was almost October.
Yeah, which is incredible.
Carrie and I just kept talking about how remarkable it was that we could be seeing wildflowers that late in the year. Yeah. That's crazy.
So as we got a little bit closer to the Brockway Summit Trailhead, we definitely started seeing more people, which is always just such a funny feeling, you know? And as we kind of headed downhill straight to the water cache, we were hoping there'd still be water because that's the one awkward thing is you can't rely on it, but also you kind of have to. And
we'd been reading a lot of comments on Far Out, and it seemed like there was pretty consistently 12 gallons of water there.
Yeah.
So we felt like fairly comfortable relying on it in quotes, but we also had carried quite a bit of water with us. I think we carried like probably
an extra
9 liters total or something like that. So we'd obviously been drinking it as we walked, but if there was no water cache there, we would be able to make our dinner and our breakfast and have some more water before we'd have to rely on another water source. Probably 4 miles past that point.
Yep. So there was water. That was kind of an interesting little thing. You know, you cross the road at the summit and then they don't cache the water in a spot where it's super obvious. You kind of had to go down another little road and then you found the pile. So that was super nice. And we kind of took a little break there. We'd already gone, 17 and a half miles that day. So it'd been kind of a long day already. And it was just funny because then Molly had cell phone service. So she watched a little bit of the Packers game. Which then it was luckily not something we needed to stay and watch a lot of.
Oh gosh, right.
Another phone usage story.
Yeah, that's where, though, something like Far Out was really handy because someone described really nicely where the cache was located. And I think we'd seen some comments of people like, I never found it. Yeah. But really, I mean, if you just do a little bit of a deep dive into people's comments, it's pretty helpful, and it was pretty obvious where to go to find the water cache. Yeah. So we were really appreciative that there was water for us there.
Oh, I know. Thank you to whoever puts the water there. Yeah. But it was delightful.
Yeah, it was.
It made us happy, and then we were all filled up and ready to go to our campsite.
In order to get to our camp spot for the night, we had to cross, I think it was maybe one paved road and then an unpaved forest road. And we were using Far Out to see basically a camp spot someone had mentioned being good, a certain mileage from one of the roads. So we were kind of looking at the Far Out app to try to make sure we got the right distance in. And it's just kind of funny because it seemed like maybe Carrie and my Far Out apps were off by like 0.01 of a mile. Yeah. And I think I was supposed to be like 0.39 away from this one road that we were going to cross. And so when we got to that point, the person, they described it as what, $1 million view campsite?
Yeah.
So we were like, oh,
who doesn't want $1 million?
I know, we'll stay there. And someone said, it's not the Ritz-Carlton. And I'm like, I feel like I haven't heard that phrase in like 20 years. But okay. So
that's actually located in South Lake Tahoe City.
Yeah, exactly. So once I got to the right like mileage on the app, I started to go up the hill a little, and I couldn't find any flat spots, and I kind of broadened my search a little, but then I came back down to the trail. And
the biggest issue honestly wasn't the lack of flat spots. It was super shrubby there.
Yeah.
You know, so
there was nowhere to pitch a tent.
Yeah, because of all the trees.
Yeah, but I had like gone up the hill where there were some open areas.
Oh, okay.
But everything was like, no, it was not really a good spot to pitch a tent, and we've even pitched our tent in like pretty bad spots.
Yeah.
So Carrie, her app though, I think was actually accurate.
Yeah.
Because she went a little bit further down, and I was like,
why are we searching so hard 0.02 miles away from where it says it is? I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah.
So I went a little farther and looked up, and there was a ton of really decent campsites. Not anything that anyone would complain about. But the funny thing to me always is, again with this trail, we were so close to a road. So it's just like you could hear like that zoom, zoom, like trucks going by. And then I have never camped that close to a bike trail. It's one thing with backpacking, I feel like you could see or hear people coming from far away, but with bikes, they're just going to whiz by. And I thought, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to be like, I'm going to be pooping by a bike trail in the morning, you know? So it was kind of just a little bit funny about where the campsites were located. It just felt very urban.
Yeah, honestly. So we did like venture up the hillside, and there were multiple spots that were nice and flat.
Yeah.
And they were also our favorite tree, Jeffrey Pines, around the area. So we sniffed a couple. Well, I sniffed a couple trees.
Which, if you weren't here for our last podcast series, they smell like, what is it, butterscotch?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's why she smelled like trees.
Oh, it's just like really nice to have such a nice, wonderful scent in the wilderness when otherwise I'm just smelling not, well,
you're smelling fresh air and yourself.
Fresh air and myself. So we remembered the gal from Muir Trail Ranch giving us some advice for a way to relax at the end of the day is to find a nice Jeffrey Pine and then lay down and get your feet up on it. So we actually found a nice spot, and this is an inversion day, apparently.
Yeah, apparently.
We inverted for the second time of the day, laying down with our feet propped against a Jeffrey Pine. And it was
super nice.
Yeah.
And the nice part about that day was we made really good time, honestly, for going 18.7 miles. We were there by 6:30, and I think the sun wasn't going to set for a while still. So we kind of honestly really dilly-dallied setting up camp. We laid down, we put our feet up, we looked at the views, and then we really thought about where we wanted to put our tent, and we put our tent up, and then we finally made dinner, which, by the way, Molly loved.
Yeah, we tried a Peak Refuel bot dal, and it was so tasty. I would definitely taste it or like get it again. And I can't remember, what was it in there? Was it sweet potatoes?
Yeah, I think so. It was a curry of some
There was
sort,
something
basically
in there, though, some ingredient that was just super fun to have, rehydrated, and I hadn't had before in the backcountry. And so I would definitely buy that flavor again.
So it definitely started out super positive that night, where we were just feeling good. The temperature was pretty pleasant for sitting outside, which had been really quite cold the last couple nights.
Which I also wrote in my journal. Carrie said her ankle is feeling better. Was that real?
Well, I don't know. I'm kind of confused about you writing that, because I think maybe it was feeling medium okay, I guess. I think it started hurting right at the end of the day as we were like descending towards Brockway Summit, because I feel like that trail was a little bit more rocky and you couldn't have as nice flat of feet. But a lot of our trail that day had been pretty soft and kind of good trail for walking on. So I think it wasn't horribly bad.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I definitely was trying to put my feet up that day, because I kept thinking, I think one of my feet is swollen. So that's why we were putting our feet up so much, as I thought maybe I needed to fix something.
So that's what we were doing.
Yeah. So anyway, we get everything all set up, and as we're getting into our tent for the night, all of a sudden Molly's zipper completely stopped working. And
for my rain fly.
Yeah, for her rain fly. So she would, zip it, unzip it, and the whole time it's just completely wide open.
And this is an issue we'd been having for a little while, but the issue had only been really like the top 6 inches of the zipper. And I think it all started back to when our tent froze after it was wet. Like we woke up in the morning and the zipper had split. And all I had to do was like unzip it and rezip it, and it was fine. And of course, I don't know. I guess I didn't think that I needed to problem solve a fix. I just thought I could zip over it and it'd be fine. And then it had happened a couple other times earlier this season in 2023, but all I had to do was zip it back up to the top and down, and it was fine. But this time, there was no fix. And literally, I tried like 15 times, and the zipper would not mate.
And this was really just a bigger issue, because there was a forecast for a decent amount of rain the next night, and we hadn't been planning to stay in Tahoe City. We'd been planning to go about 18 miles the next day, camp 2 or 3 miles outside of Tahoe City, and then go into town, and that way you don't have to spend any money on a hotel.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, that's not looking too good when heavy rain is in the forecast, possible snow, and you can't zip your zipper.
And you're even thinking, too, it's just like
so
getting
windy,
pretty cold and windy at night, where you can trap a lot of heat by having a functioning zipper.
Yeah. So luckily, because we were in an area with service, I was able to look online, and we didn't have to totally doom spiral, because I could find that this is not a super abnormal occurrence. I did figure out that, yes, it was sort of our fault for never washing our tent. But to be fair, I didn't know that, So we kind of said, okay, we're going to make this plan. And I said, we could just try to go to Tahoe City tomorrow. I think it's 21 miles, and we've been doing really long mileage days. But if we did a very long mile day tomorrow, but then we slept in a bed and we didn't have to set anything up and we didn't have to buy dinner. And I was kind of also thinking about how we were going to do our resupply if it was torrential raining outside, where that was kind of the location that I was planning to repack our bear cans, was the outdoors. So we kind of discussed it, and I think Molly looked up and we saw that there were some hotels that had rooms available. So we decided that in the morning we'd probably try to pack up early and get out of there. And honestly, it was kind of interesting because we tried all these different ways to make her zipper re-zip, but it wouldn't. And I finally just decided, like, I am just going to take my hands and push this zipper together all the way down until it works.
Like puzzle pieces, pretty much.
And it actually worked, and it stayed zipped the whole night. And I mean, when we rolled it up, it stayed zipped.
And the most amazing thing is that we tried to do that the next day, and it did not work.
Yeah.
But Carrie was able to just sheer willpower and a little bit of prayer puzzle piece the zipper together, and it stayed. Which worked really well.
Now it's later than we wanted to go to bed, right? Yeah. Because, of course, we've been problem solving that for forever. And so we both have to get in through my door of the tent because we obviously aren't going to reopen Molly's door. No. And so we get into the tent, and and then when I zipped my side of the tent, all of a sudden it wasn't zipping either.
And was it the rain fly for you?
The rain fly.
Okay.
And I'm looking at that. We're kind of frustrated. Yeah. We're trying to fix it. We're like, okay, so neither side of our tent will close or stay dry. And just starting to feel so frustrated. And I finally got it to zip, and that was great. And then I'm like, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and zip the inner door of the tent. And as I zip it, I kind of noticed, hey, I don't know if I actually closed it all the way. And I looked down to think about that, and there is the hugest spider I've ever had next to me. Honestly, I don't even know how to describe its size. The body was like the body of an eagle with the head of an owl. I'm just kidding. No, the body was just, I mean, I wish I could show you with my hands. I don't know I don't know how to. Maybe golf ball size. When we looked it up later, because people were like, was that a tarantula? But I don't think they have tarantulas there. There's something called a wolf spider. And I've seen wolf spiders in my life, like in Michigan, whatever. But this was a massive wolf spider. Like, I think in the palm of my hand, it would probably, with all its legs, that would probably be about its size. And so I was just like, oh no, spider. And so then we're trying to kill it.
But what did you say to me? Because I didn't know it was there.
And I probably just said, there's a gigantic spider.
But whatever Carrie's tone was just made me react, honestly, so extremely. Yeah. I was screaming.
Well, you saw that spider. Okay, I don't think it was my tone. It was the spider.
Okay, I think you're right.
Oh, it was my tone. I think I said very calmly, like, there's a huge spider over here. And so then we're trying to kill it, and we would hit it with a shoe, and it kept not dying. It would just be like skittering around,
in the baffles of Carrie's her sleeping pad. So I feel like every time I tried to kill it was in the baffle, and so we weren't making contact.
And there's like a little bit of screaming, and
a lot of screaming.
Molly finally goes, "Oh shit!" And I was like, okay. We're going to kill the spider. It has nowhere to go. It can't hide. So we got to just calm down and it's not a big deal. Let's just kill it.
So I calmly took the shoe and put it on the spider and then just
proceeded to smear it across my entire sleeping pad.
And there were just like legs like still twitching, and
oh my goodness.
I don't even know. I didn't want to touch it to get it out of the tent.
Yeah, so I think I flipped it out with my shoe, but because it was still pretty intact for a dead spider.
There was still like three legs just twitching there that we kind of swept, so they were like underneath Carrie's sleeping pad.
And then I finally was able to zip my inner zipper because I was like, I'm not going to go to sleep tonight if that zipper is unzipped. There's probably a whole family of them out there wanting to avenge their dead friend.
Then we had to take our headlamps and then scan
the entire tent
everywhere. So we had to look in the bottom of the tent and underneath everything. Because I think that poor unlucky guy, like, he could have just lived anywhere. A very happy life.
He could have gone anywhere.
But he had to go step foot inside of our tent.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing he must have done it just as you were closing. I don't even know.
I don't know. I like to believe that, but then a part of me thinks maybe he maybe he'd been in there every night. Maybe that's why I felt so warm the night before.
That was really scary.
That was probably one of my least favorite moments to realize, oh, there's a gigantic spider family that could just want to come live inside my tent. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Two Sisters on Adventures podcast. As always, you can find pictures and videos of the things we talked about today on either our Instagram or Facebook. Just Two Sisters on Adventures with the number 2. Although there will not be a picture of the spider because
we didn't think to take one.
I'm not going to take a picture of a spider when it's inside of, it's like right almost on my leg. So there will be no spider photographs. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.